Like, subscribe, and hype the video. Also, leave a comment on any topics you want to hear about in the future. Okay, let's dive in. What if the moon isn't actually a moon at all? What if it's something else entirely? Something built, something placed, something that arrived in our sky long after humans were already here, watching, and wondering why it suddenly showed up. That's the claim behind one of the strangest, longest-running conspiracy theories in the world, that the moon is an artificial object, possibly alien in origin, and that it wasn't always part of our sky at all. Today, we're going deep into every major version of this theory, where people claim the moon actually came from, why some believe it's hollow, why some insist it doesn't appear in humanity's oldest art and mythology, and what the real scientific evidence actually says about each claim. Some of this is going to surprise you. Stay with me because the ending of this video connects all of it together in a way most people never expect. Let's start with the boldest version of this theory, sometimes called the Spaceship Moon hypothesis. It first gained real traction in 1970 when two Soviet scientists, Mikhail Vasin and Alexander Sherbakov, published a paper suggesting the moon might not be a natural satellite at all, but a massive hollowed-out spacecraft, either built by an ancient advanced civilization or by something entirely non-human. Believers in this theory point to a handful of strange moon facts as supporting evidence. They point out the moon's size relative to Earth is unusually large compared to most moons orbiting other planets in our solar system. They point out that the moon's orbit is almost perfectly circular, and that its size and distance from Earth create an almost suspiciously perfect coincidence, appearing exactly the right size in our sky to completely cover the sun during a solar eclipse, down to a precision that seems, to some, too convenient to be random chance. To theorists drawn to this idea, a natural moon forming by random cosmic processes simply wouldn't land on numbers this clean. To them, that precision looks less like coincidence and more like design. Like, subscribe, and hype the video if this is blowing your mind so far. And let's keep going, because it gets stranger. Here's where the theory picks up something that isn't just speculation. It's based on a real, documented event from the Apollo program, just interpreted very differently by believers and scientists. During the Apollo 12 mission in 1969, astronauts intentionally crashed the ascent stage of their lunar module into the moon's surface after completing their mission, specifically so that seismometers left behind on the surface could measure how the resulting impact traveled through the moon's interior. What they recorded surprised everyone listening back on Earth. The moon reportedly continued vibrating, or ringing, for almost an hour afterward. To conspiracy theorists, this single data point became one of their strongest pieces of supposed evidence, claiming that a natural, solid rocky body shouldn't ring like a bell at all, and that only a hollow structure, like the inside of an artificial spacecraft, would resonate that way for so long. Scientists studying the same data came away with a very different, far less dramatic conclusion, and we'll get to exactly what they found in just a moment. But first, let's talk about an even bigger claim, that the moon wasn't even in our sky to begin with. Like, subscribe, and hype the video, and drop a comment if you've heard this next theory before, because it's one of the wildest claims in this entire topic. This next claim is one of the most repeated versions of the theory, and it goes something like this. Some believers argue that the moon is conspicuously missing, or barely present, in many of humanity's oldest myths, cave paintings, and early astronomical records, especially compared to how prominently the sun, certain constellations, and specific bright stars or planets appear. From this, some have argued that the moon may have only appeared in Earth's sky relatively recently in human history, possibly arriving, being moved into position, or being switched on by an outside intelligence at some point within recorded human memory. Now here's where we have to be honest about what the actual historical and archaeological record shows, because this claim doesn't hold up well against it. The moon appears extensively throughout early human history, in Paleolithic cave markings believed to track lunar phases dating back tens of thousands of years, in the earliest known calendars from civilizations across the world that were explicitly built around lunar cycles. And in the mythology of essentially every ancient culture we have detailed records of, from Mesopotamian moon gods to Chinese lunar mythology to countless indigenous traditions around the world that center entire ceremonies and calendars on the moon's phases. In other words, rather than being absent from humanity's earliest skywatching, the moon is arguably one of the most consistently documented objects in the entire history of human astronomy, precisely because its regular, predictable phases made it one of the easiest celestial objects for ancient people to track, well before they had any concept of the sun's actual movement or the positions of distant planets. Like, subscribe, and hype the video, and stick around, because next we're getting into where people actually claim the moon came from, if it didn't simply form naturally alongside Earth. If you accept the premise that the moon is artificial or alien in origin, the obvious next question is, where did it actually come from? This is where the theories branch out into several different directions. One common version claims the moon was deliberately towed, guided, or otherwise transported into Earth's orbit by an advanced civilization, sometimes framed as ancient aliens, sometimes framed as a far older, now extinct human civilization, with technology beyond what we currently possess, specifically positioned to stabilize Earth's environment, regulate tides, or monitor humanity from above. Another version ties into broader rogue planet mythology, similar to theories about a hidden planet such as the often discussed Nibiru, suggesting the moon might have originally been a free-floating object that wandered into our solar system from elsewhere in the galaxy and was eventually captured by Earth's gravity, rather than forming alongside our planet billions of years ago. A third, more elaborate version suggests the moon functions as a kind of artificial observation platform or relay station, sometimes described as a biological experiment control panel for life on Earth, monitoring or subtly influencing human development from a fixed, predictable position in our sky. None of these versions agree on exactly who built it, when, or why, which is itself a detail worth noticing, because the theory tends to split into several incompatible explanations rather than converging on one consistent story. Like, subscribe, and hype the video, and let me know in the comments which version of this theory you'd actually heard before today. Now let's walk through what the actual scientific evidence says, because there's a remarkably well-supported explanation for the moon's formation that accounts for nearly every suspicious detail conspiracy theories point to. The leading scientific explanation is called the giant impact hypothesis. It proposes that roughly 4.5 billion years ago, shortly after Earth itself formed, a Mars-sized object, sometimes referred to by the hypothetical name Theia, collided with the young Earth at a glancing angle. The resulting debris from that collision, a mixture of material from both Earth and the impacting object, was thrown into orbit around our planet and gradually coalesced into the moon we see today. This explanation isn't just speculation. It's supported by multiple independent lines of evidence. Lunar rock samples brought back by Apollo astronauts show striking chemical similarities to Earth's mantle rock, exactly what you'd expect if the moon formed largely from material knocked loose from our own planet. Computer simulations of a glancing, Mars-sized impact consistently produce a debris disk that would naturally coalesce into a body roughly the size and composition of our actual moon. And the unusually large size of our moon relative to Earth, the detail conspiracy theorists point to as suspicious, is actually a predicted, expected outcome of this specific kind of formation event, not an anomaly at all. As for the moon ringing like a bell after the Apollo 12 impact, scientists studying that data determined the prolonged vibrations were caused by the moon's extremely dry, fractured, and structurally unusual outer rock layers, which transmit and scatter seismic vibrations very differently than Earth's wetter, more uniform crust does. It's a genuinely unusual property of the moon's geology, but one explained by its composition and formation history, not by an empty, hollow interior. Later seismic and gravity data from multiple lunar missions has consistently shown the moon has a real, differentiated interior, complete with a small core, mantle, and crust, just like a rocky planet, not a hollow shell. And the eclipse coincidence, the moon appearing to perfectly cover the sun's disk, is also explained without any need for design. The Moon is gradually drifting away from Earth at a measurable rate of about 1.5 inches per year, meaning this precise alignment is a temporary coincidence of timing, one that didn't exist in the distant past and won't exist in the distant future. We simply happen to exist during the narrow multi-million-year window where the math lines up this cleanly, not because anything was engineered, but because, statistically, some era of Earth's multi-billion-year history was always going to be the one where this coincidence happened to be true. So here's where all of this actually lands. The Moon's unusual size, its suspiciously perfect eclipse alignment, even its strange, long-lasting seismic vibrations, every one of these details that fuels the artificial moon theory has a well-documented, evidence-backed natural explanation, supported by physical rock samples, independent seismic data, and decades of consistent simulation results from multiple independent research teams. And the deeper claim that the Moon is missing from humanity's earliest skywatching doesn't hold up at all once you actually look at the historical record, where the Moon turns out to be one of the most consistently tracked, mythologized, and calendar-defining objects in the entire history of human civilization. That said, it's not hard to understand why this theory has stuck around for over 50 years. There's something undeniably strange about looking up at an object massive enough to control our tides, stabilize our climate, and light up our night sky, and realizing how genuinely improbable it is that it exists at all, in exactly the size and position it does. The truth, once again, turns out to be less about hidden builders and more about an extraordinary cosmic accident, 4.5 billion years in the making, one that happened to leave us with a night sky and a species capable of looking up and asking the question in the first place. Like, subscribe, and hype the video if you made it this far, and leave a comment letting me know what space topic or conspiracy you want broken down next. I read every one of them. I'll see you in the next video.